A small town once lived here, in the wide open spaces of opportunity. It was a modest town on the plains of the New Mexico Territory. Begun in the early 1900s, this pioneer town was different than most built in the West. It was heralded as the first exclusive Negro settlement in the New Mexico Territory. It was a place where blacks could truly be free, a planned colony where they could determine their own destiny and not be attacked and harmed because of the color of their skin. A man from Georgia named Frank Boyer founded this town and called it Blackdom. It was more than a claim staked in the dirt. Moral stewardship, personal freedom, and ethnic pride. These were the cornerstones that Boyer used to support families and build a community.
A leader is someone that can motivate people to do things that they have not done before. So here is Francis Boyer motivating people to say, yes, we can establish a whole township. It's possible, people. We can name the town. We can name the streets. We can have our own schools. We can have our own post office. We have these skills. That's the knapsack of experiences that we brought from a period of slavery. Let's do it. That was the leadership.
Little is known about Frank Boyer and the town of Blackdom. History has often overlooked the contributions of Black Americans. Boyer was a child in Georgia when he first heard about the West, his imagination sparked by his father's memory of the vast, unclaimed land of the Southwest. Frank's father was Henry Boyer, a free Negro from Pullman, Georgia, who served as a wagoneer in Colonel Alexander Doniphan's army of Missouri Volunteers, fighting in the Mexican-American War. Henry was not the only black to see the potential of a new start in the western frontier. Blacks had gone to the West as part of the military, as workers on the railroad, as cowboys, fur trappers, and colonists.
Most people simply believe that first blacks who came to America were slaves. That is not necessarily true. The earlier blacks who came here to explore with the Spanish came to this country. They weren't all slaves. Some of them were soldiers and some of them were freemen, just like the Spanish citizens. The West really was somewhat uncharted territory. A man was gauged by his ability and his skills and his character more so than the color of his skin.
After the war, Henry went home to Georgia, enchanted by the West and undoubtedly impressed upon his family the opportunity for a future in the unspoiled New Mexico Territory. Henry never returned, but his son, Frank, grew up listening to his father's tales and the words of the black leaders of the time.
This period after the Emancipation Proclamation is probably one of the most interesting and exciting periods of the experience of the black race in this country and just Black America in general, because never before had a group have to decide how shall we live out our lives.
Let's look at the contemporaries of Francis. There was a W. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington's of that era. Certainly, he was influenced by those influences. We're influenced by the people that we live with during our time. He was influenced, and what he saw, perhaps as I tried to imagine the energy and the enthusiasm and the emotion that gripped him, that we needed a Moses, someone that would lead people out of continued Jim Crow laws after the Emancipation Proclamation. So here is a man being influenced by the contemporaries of his time, saying that there is something in me that says that black people in this country, the Negro people, can have a better life.
Frank grew up in the years after the Civil War, a time when blacks had never experienced so much opportunity and so much hatred. They were becoming teachers, lawyers, businessmen. In reaction, Southern politicians sought to destroy their rights, while violence threatened their daily lives. In 1877, Reconstruction failed. Union troops left, and angry mobs killed nearly 2,000 blacks. To be free. Black communities sprouted from Kansas to California with the greatest concentration in the Oklahoma Territory. This migration was much larger than what is recorded in the history books. Nearly 40,000 blacks alone migrated to Kansas between 1877 and 1880 during the Exoduster movement.
In the West, a lot of times they were gone completely without any realization of what this might mean. But they were willing to take that chance. They felt we have no other choice. We either become subjected to this ongoing oppression or we begin to take our lives in our hands.
So the West was an escape valve. It was a haven. It was the promised land. It was like a magnet drawing people from something bad. It was like the legacy of the children of Israel leaving an oppressed bondage and going to find freedom to establish their own property in their own land.
Educated, charismatic, proud, and poor, Frank Boyer grew up in these times and also wanted to leave the South, but realized first that he must complete his education. Working his way through schools, he eventually graduated from Morehouse University and began to teach. Frank had the courage to teach black history to his students, an extraordinary idea at the time, and one for which he was severely reprimanded. Frank continued his work in black history during his free time and traced his own roots to the Igbo people of Nigeria.
My grandfather always wanted to teach black history. He wanted them to know what was going on. He felt like they needed to know their roots in order for them to figure out where they were going to go from then on. What he really liked was the fact that he knew the tribe from which he came, the Igbo tribe. They were more of an intellectual type people, and they were in government, and so he just knew that he had some stock that he could work with.
Teaching jobs were scarce and unstable. To find work, Frank traveled all over the South on foot. As he would settle into each area, his dream of an all-black community began to take shape.
Francis said, I must do this, and you can see this developing in him as a young man, going to Florida, trying to start an African city. You can see him in Putnam, Georgia, trying to start another all-black city. So it was in his genes, it was in his emotions, it was in his desires to say, where can we go to farm this land?
Frank met and fell in love with Ella Magruder. She was also a school teacher, a graduate from Haynes Institute in Georgia. Ella was a woman of tremendous character, who also longed for a better life. Frank and Ella married and had 3 sons and a daughter in Georgia. The decade between 1890 and 1900 was the most dangerous time for a black man to be alive. Frank saw firsthand the brutality of that decade. He witnessed a white customer kill a black barber for nicking him while shaving. A jury found the white man innocent of murder. After all, they said, the black barber had nicked him twice.
From what I can understand from Grandpa, he'd never seen a killing. But then when he sees this with his own eyes, it's like life had no meaning. And it's got to be disconcerting to say, nobody got angry about this. So what do we do about this? We just let it go like that? So I think he had at that point, it's enough is enough, and I'm going to leave.
Frank Boyer left the South with little more than the clothes on his back and his father's Tales of the West in his pocket. Ella would stay behind in Georgia until Frank settled and sent for her and the children. Frank did not journey alone, for one of his students named Dan Keyes joined him. Together they walked nearly 2,000 miles to the Promised Land, to the wide open spaces of the New Mexico Territory.
Oh, let us all from bondage flee. Let my people go and soon days.